Good afternoon and welcome again to today's Talking Locally conversation with Darren Rodwell, the ex-council leader for Barking and Dagenham in London and a dynamic force in local government and still a dynamic force in the voice of local government. Under his leadership, Barking and Dagenham became one of the fastest changing parts of the capital, a revolution in local government in London, leading really bold programmes in regeneration, housing. They built more houses than any other London borough in his time there, and great community renewal programmes to tackle long-term inequalities and to restore that sense of place and local pride. Today, we're going to explore why Darren went into local politics, what drives his continued passion for place-based leadership, and how he believes that local authorities can drive major regeneration while staying rooted in the real needs of their resident. Darren, thank you for joining us here at Officio Head Office.
Lovely to be here.
Let's begin. So, you often describe yourself as someone who lives and breathes, which is wonderful, your borough. What first inspired you to stand as a councillor? Because people don't do it now as much, right?
So, well, I hope more people do, and I hope a more diverse range of people do as well. So Barking and Dagenham was what I would class as a very traditional council, both in the way it operated, the service it worked for, and the way it thought about the world. And that got us to a place under the last Labour government where the BNP became the official opposition. So what happened was the institution had forgotten to be the servant of the community of which it served. The politicians had got themselves into a lane of comfort in a lot of ways, and it was exploited by the BNP. Now, I didn't blame my community for voting BNP, but what I wanted to know as a community leader at the time was why did they feel they needed to? And once I understood that, I then thought, well, actually, I could do this. In fact, I think I need to do this to support their concerns in getting their voices heard within an administration that had been Labour since 1947. So none of this there'd been no real change or churn or challenge. And I often say, as well as beating the BNP, I was very proud to bring what I call modern socialism back into the borough.
Yeah, there's a phrase you don't often hear in local government. Well, you do in parts of London, but not as commonly. But so Barking and Dagenham, under your watch and continuing to, has undergone enormous change in the last 20, 30 years. What did you think the key challenge and opportunity was when you first became leader, your first day when you became leader? What was your burning platform?
Giving everyone a voice. People to move communities forward, to give communities the feeling that they have a place in society, you've got to give them their value. And I believe everyone has a value, and that was my driving force. So our mantra from the very start was one borough, one community, no one left behind. And again, that sounds very old socialist, but it wasn't. It was about saying that everyone has a value in our society, and what we need to do is help them find their value. And that's what I did. So you say about what we did. Actually, 91% of the people there today weren't there 20 years ago. We had the biggest churn of anywhere in the country at the time. We had the largest growth of youth population anywhere in the country at the time. And that put on extra demand. And what we had, like all the other London boroughs, it all started with housing and a real housing demand. So I looked at the problem and then come up with solutions on how to fix it, because for far too long we'd done this is the route we go down because we're local government, where what I wanted was us to be innovative, to think about the solutions to the problems that the community was facing, and then getting them to help us fix the problems.
We're big fans here at Officio about outcome-based solutions. That's the only way to achieve sustainable solutions. That's fantastic.
So if I tell you then, between 2019 and 2024, we built the equivalent of 20% of London's social affordable housing as one single borough. We were the only London borough to reduce temporary accommodation year on year for 5 years. When I started as leader, the waiting list was around 13,500. In that decade of being leader, I brought it down to 4,300. At the same time, we built the equivalent of 20 new schools, 4 of them being special schools. And we took our schools from 67% good to outstanding, 68% good to outstanding, which was the lowest in London and below the national average. And by the time I had done the decade, it was at 97%, and there was 3 universities.
How did they ever let you go? How did they let you leave? I mean, how did they? But that's fantastic, because that's like really focusing on the needs of a borough. So as leader, you've been known for taking a really bold, just judging by the way you're answering questions, an unapologetic approach to regeneration. What do you think the key is to delivering change at scale in a local area when there are so many things stacked up against it?
Well, I'm now going to go post-leader as well, but it's all about leadership. And a leader is only a title. Leadership is what you do with the title. So what I was able to do was make sure that every person in the community, through the BD Can Do, which was the Barking and Dagenham Citizens Alliance Network Digital Overview, BD Can, had a voice in all the decision making. Now, we would still make the decisions at the top because we were the cabinet and the leadership, but you needed to know what the community actually wanted to think and say on a subject. And that was really important to me. So we built in mechanisms where it was layered to allow people to have a voice. If they had a voice, then they had a value. And if they have a value, then they're invested in change. So what we were able to do just in development alone was look at the problem. So what was the problem? Well, we weren't building. Okay, so we set up B First. 27,000 homes went through B First planning. We took the planning department from 338 from 341 local authorities planning areas down to number 3 within 4 years and number 1 ever since. Okay, by using a methodology that would work using the private sector resource with public sector values. That really worked in helping deliver the change we needed to see, because we also set up Reside, which was the community rent model. So that was different people paying different rents based on their different incomes in the same location. So there was no poor doors, no gated communities. The biggest issue we had was most people couldn't get council housing, so they didn't have the need, but nor did they have the market rent that they needed as well. So that was causing the council a problem. So it was, how do we fix that problem? So it was about finding long-term institutional patient capital to invest in that whilst using the public purse as well. And we brought the two and moulded the two together. Linking that into BD Energy, we set up the largest energy district system in the country at the time. And that was really important because we wanted to make sure people could afford their bills as well, because we were dealing with some very difficult times and people in very difficult situations. So it's about showing the aspiration whilst remembering we could only go as fast as the slowest person, and we had to support those people.
So you've referred to your model as socialist a couple of times, which is fantastic, but it's a really innovative social model when you use phrases like, independent patient capital. Your understanding of the market is acute, right? For a socialist, it's fantastic because you've actually manipulated, used, in a good way, the marketplace to drive really good, equitable solutions.
Yeah, I would say I'm a socialist capitalist. Okay, so I believe in the socialist principles, which is not communism. It's everyone has a value and everyone should be supported to do as best as they can, but remember those who can't.
Yeah.
But we work in a capitalist system. We work in business, in effect. So you have to set yourself up so it's a business model. And that's what I did. I now call it inclusive growth in my new world with my new consultancy. And the idea is it's about the power of 3, 5 steps to change, 7 themes of conversation and 42 building blocks. And that model will give you an outcome that's unique to that people, purpose and place.
Clearly worked with all the houses you built. So that's fantastic. So what are the hardest trade-offs though in getting there, right? So you've done this really innovative model. You've been bringing private capital in, public sector kind of values and putting it together in a melting pot to deliver outcomes, right, for people that need it and in tune with what they actually need, which is kind of unique. But what are the trade-offs you've had to make? Because you can't do all of that with making trade. How have you had to sacrifice certain elements? What have you had to do around ambition, affordability, the community expectations, the ever-increasing demand? What have been the trade-offs to get there? What were the trade-offs to get there?
I think it was always a negotiation. And a trade-off is a negotiation. So as long as you understood, I did, that it was never a straight line, and you couldn't please all the people all the time. You could please most of the people most of the time. And I felt that it was really important that we needed the institution of the council to understand it needed to come into the 21st century. So changing the way the workforce thought about how they were dealing with residents was really, really important, from a sort of a parent mindset to a partnership mindset. That was very difficult in the institution because we were talking about people and getting people in the right place. And again, you can't push people. You can nudge them along, you can help them, you can coerce them into thinking in that way, and then accepting that some people go, well, that's not for me as well. And that worked with investors as well. So we came out with a vision. I call it a master vision. That's where Barcelona-on-Thames come from, Mini Manhattan, Rodin Riviera, Digital Dagenham, London's Hollywood. They came from the vision of what the community was saying was their aspiration, and then we were then saying to investors, well, look, this is what we can see here. Would you like to invest in that vision? Because actually the vision's been given by the community, facilitated for by the local authority, and then we was looking for partners to invest in it. But it was tough to move people around to that way of thinking.
A lot of balls to juggle.
Many.
So you've overseen one of London's largest house building programs in Barking and Dagenham, or you did. What do you think the most important lesson you've learned is about delivering homes that people can actually afford?
So actually it starts with the data in the first instance, and I talk about cold data, warm conversation. And with those two elements, you can then get a master vision. So we knew that we needed to build housing. We knew that we needed to build the right type of housing. We knew that whilst we had stock of 16,500 council homes, most people couldn't get those unless they were in need. And people were literally waiting on the list for other people to pass on or go into a home, for instance. So we needed to come up with a new model, and that's where the community rent model came from, which was different levels based on people's incomes. And that's the model I talk about forever now, because if we're building communities, and look, I've got the aspiration, we need to build as many homes as we can. Government says it's 1.5. They say there's 1.4 million people on the social waiting list. My question would be, okay, but are all of those genuine? And how do we know they are? All right, because in Barking and Dagenham, we took the data of the incomes of where people were at, and then used that to help navigate what we needed to build in place. And that's where the community rent model come from. So we had 30%, 50%, 65%, 80%, 100%, and shared ownership in the same community. And that was really important, because now what you're doing is you're building a model where it's a mixed community and people start managing each other's expectations, and that in turn brings the cost down to local authorities. And so it was a very clever forward-thinking model. We did it, and it proved it. We weren't the largest council house builder in London. We were the largest in 24 in inside housing to be in England and Wales. And it was something, and they're still doing it, and it will still continue. And I'm very proud of the fact that what I was able to do was give people an aspiration for the future, using housing as the growth of the country, because the built environment sector is the largest sector in the country. It's twice the size of the financial sector. It's 4 times the size of the cultural sector. It hits every region of the country. It's not just housing, it's the roads, it's buildings, office blocks. So if the built environment sector is struggling like it is now, growth in the country will struggle. So my next LinkedIn post for Christmas is, what's the Christmas presents I want from Treasury for the house building department.
Good luck. So it's obviously worked really well, right, the model?
Yeah.
Why isn't every council doing it?
You have to be very bold to take an organisation that is normally very conservative, not in a political sense.
Yeah, small C, right?
Yeah, in an operational way. Remember, we took what would be general fund finance and put that into a private company, gave it its own board, and we did it in a number of companies, and said, right, we're not the specialists, but we are the shareholders. So we want the specialists to do the work, and we will reap the reward. And we got a social reward more people getting housed in the right appropriate housing. We also got a financial reward where 30% of the council tax was the equivalent we were being paid by those companies, which is quite something.
Yeah.
Now, for people to do that, they've got to be very secure in themselves, because there is a lot of political attack. There can be a lot of personal attack, and you don't go into local government if you're worried about being
sadly.
But that was the case in point. Remember, I'd taken a community that had voted, quite a lot of them, to a far right position, and I had to bring them along as well. So you have to take the good with the bad. But I think that bold leadership happens at different levels by different parts of the community. I was just the person that managed to bring it all together.
You're the right person for the right time, right? So, Darren, Barking and Dagenham has one of the youngest and most diverse populations in the entire country, not just London. How do you think that shaped your approach to engagement and local leadership?
What was really interesting was how people felt. So long-standing residents like myself, I say I'm only part of the 9% now that are left in the borough that's been over 20 years. How did we feel about the place? Because we'd seen it change, the churn, the change of the place. We were a very proud industrial town. Women's rights was massive in the borough. So all of that sort of changed with the deindustrialisation. So it was about the rebirth of the place, and we had to give people purpose. And again, when you've got a lot of churn of community change, and over a 2-year period, 50,000 people moved out the borough and 50,000 people moved in. The people moving in, though, were mainly from different ethnic backgrounds, and that caused lots of tensions. But the basics are the basics, and I talk about the power of three, and that is everyone wants a home that's warm and safe and truly affordable to them. Their tenure is secondary. Everyone wants to live in a community that respects their values and they can respect the community's values. Thirdly, everyone wants their child to do well, which means they want that community to be aspirational. That's a very simple thing. It doesn't matter what religion you are, it doesn't matter what ethnic background you're from, or where your status is in life. That's what we all want to see. And I was really proud that whilst we did have the challenges, we had the inclusion, which showed that everyone could do what they wanted to do to a limited, lesser degree. But in the chamber, at one point, under my leadership, we had 14 different countries of origin. It was the most diverse chamber in the country at the time. And I was very proud of that fact, because a couple of years earlier, we had the BNP. I also look at how the community responded to the work we did together, the layering of different events we put on, bringing the communities together, getting them to understand even just when to put the bins out. It's those simple things. Because once you break down barriers of colour or creed or wealth, and you make it personal about people, actually, we all want the same things. So that's what we were able to do. It's very much what I was planning, and that delivered the outcomes that we saw, these massive changes within the community, whilst acknowledging that there were some people that didn't like it. We had to accept that there would always be people that weren't forward thinking in the way that we were, and I respected that.
That's fair enough. So how do you think that councils can ensure that regeneration can include aspects like social value, new jobs and skills and training, etc., as well as the redevelopment of the physical environment? These sort of add-ons.
So the problem at the moment is we have a situation where regeneration is about land uplift and property uplift at the exclusion of community. Now, there's tokenism to it, so you'll get you'll get the apprentices, and you'll get the odd bit here, a bit of green there, and so on. But actually, that's not what the community needs or wants. They want sustainability in their community. Now, I don't mean the green sustainability; I mean the community sustainability. So, what we did was we built a master vision first, which then meant we could go out to the marketplace and say, look, we accept that you need to make a profit. You accept we need to build a community. And when we both come from it at our respective points, we will meet somewhere in the middle. And if it isn't for you, that's fine as well. You can go off and do business elsewhere. But I was able to bring in over £10 billion worth of inward investment and actually show another 10 billion in train as well. It was nearly a 30-year project. So I knew when I was starting the project, I was never going to finish it. But it doesn't mean that the aspiration had gone away once I'd left. What it meant was it would continue with a new leader, but with the same type of vision of trying to take the borough forward. And politically, did it work? Well, if you take the percentage of people voting for a political party, I got the highest vote of any political leader twice in London's history.
It's quite rare, and I mean this as a massive compliment, to hear a politician of any sort level to talk about setting up a project that they know they never finish. It's like aristocrats building houses they won't ever live in or planting trees they never see grow. It's quite a rare thing for politicians to do. So that's an amazing thing to be able to say, is that you knew you'd never finish because it wasn't about you. Well, genuinely wasn't about you.
And that's the whole point. Everyone, because I'm quite a loud character, I accept that. I'm quite a personality, but it never was about me. And what I used to say was, I may lead the council, but I don't lead indoors. My missus does, And it was the same as I had the title of leader, but the leaders were the people living there. And if you took LBBD as a PLC, every resident was the shareholder.
Yeah.
Every resident was invested. Every resident would benefit from the change, whether that be social or financial.
Good. It's very helpful. Whatever the colour of your rosette, I think the things you're talking about should be adopted in councils all over the country, because it's so pure of heart and pure of spirit.
And what I was trying to do was show that methodology, and that's what I do now with inclusive growth in my consultancy. I work both public and private, all colours of political persuasion, because I believe my role whilst I was in public sector was to do the best I could, and I did a lot of work for London councils on housing. I did the same in the LGA. So I wanted the country to benefit, because if someone's not benefiting, no matter where they're situated, actually that's not good for the country. And because we can only go as fast as the slowest. And I want us to be the great in Great Britain once again.
Okay. So looking to other people entering local government, and it being a massively huge, important part of our lives, and perhaps underrated as such, what do you think the most important lessons you've learned about leadership and relationships in public life are?
I would say that you've got to remember that you are part of the most important element of government. Now, we've got the blue light services, and they are so important. We need them in an emergency. But local government is the glue that keeps society together. And when we went through the pandemic, I worked with great colleagues from all different parties, and with the government at a national level to keep people safe. But if it wasn't for local government, the NHS wouldn't have been able to do what it did in saving people's lives. But it was the people of local government and the people on the front line doing those menial jobs, as some people would say, that made that difference. Now, my reflection is everyone should be part of local government, whether that be an elected member, someone in the community that's an activist in whatever subject it is, because everyone should have a voice. And the best voices are those that listen and then speak, not those that shout, because the ones that shout are not listening normally. So what I would say is, I had the privilege for 10 years of leading a local authority. I met incredible people within the borough. I met incredible people cross-party across this country in the LGA, wanting to do the best for their communities. And I wish people would see people, especially in local government, not as politicians, but as community champions, because that's what I used to say. I championed my community.
Yeah.
Now, some people go, oh, pipe down, but I couldn't help it. I was very proud of the fact that Mary Wolvencroft came from Barking and Mary Shelley. I was very proud of the fact that Elizabeth Fry is buried there, and the things these women did. I was proud of the women of Fords, but also I was proud of the fact that we won the World Cup for the country, because Bobby Moore was the captain, Alf Ramsey was the manager, and we had a few Northerners helping us out as well. But in '66, the only time it was the peers, Jimmy Greaves was a Dagenham lad as well. So when you look at what I saw everyone was a leader in their own right. The job of local government is to embrace people, see their value, and elevate them to be the leaders that everyone can become.
Okay. Well, as a final piece, a final thought then, what would you say to someone who's newly starting out in local government, be it as a councillor or an officer? What would be the advice you give them to make a real difference in their community?
Be truthful to yourself. Be truthful to the people you're serving, whether that's in a political sense or in an officer sense. And remember, empathy costs nothing, but could mean the world to the person that needs it.
Very good. Thank you very much. Well, listen, thank you. You've been an inspiring guest. I mean, our socialist capitalist here that's turned the face of London, embarking Dagenham, over and made it really fresh and new and embraced all those changes that it was experiencing and delivered an outcome-led solution to so many problems that were facing people's lives. So that's fantastic.
And in my capitalist mindset, I'm available if anyone needs to contact me.
Of course. But it's really clear that you don't deeply believe in local government, local leadership, and the power that it can have. So hopefully people listening will pick up that link to your postings on LinkedIn and kind of think about what they can do in their local community, and maybe they might get involved. So if you want any advice on that, you can reach out to Darren on LinkedIn and find out about how you can become a councillor. The Local Government Association, London councils all provide advice. Most of the political parties also provide advice about joining a council as an elected member. Of course, there are also roles as officers across councils, a really important thing that delivers great services to people's lives as well. So thank you for joining us on Talking Locally. It's been a pleasure to see you. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks a lot.